Recording started.
Hello, and welcome to the Train the Trainer for Learning Session 4. This one is titled, How Can We Engage Families as Partners? My name is Katie Swanson, and I am one of the content specialists here at the Nemours National Office of Policy and Prevention, located in Washington, D.C. Our agenda today will cover the information presented in the PowerPoint presentation and in the implementation guide. Since this is not the actual presentation, we will not show the slides for the actual learning session itself, but we'll rather do a review of them to hopefully answer any questions and concerns you may have. The information presented is available in both your implementation guide and the participant handbook, so please have those out to follow along. The agenda today will cover the check-in and evaluation, including the LS3 post-test and LS4 pre-test. We will also discuss principles of family support, the importance of effective communication, early learning standards, facilitating change in your program, as well as bringing it all together and discussing resources that participants have at their disposal to further engage families. So let's jump into the check-in and evaluation segment of the day. As participants check in, go ahead and collect their action period tasks, which includes their Learning Session 3 group discussion worksheet and their long-term action plan worksheet. Make sure programs keep a copy of their long-term action plan worksheet, as this will help guide them through making the healthy changes they've identified as they move forward in this project. You all as trainers should also keep a copy, as it will help guide your technical assistance visits. Please keep in mind that at the next learning session, which is Learning Session 5, participants will be asked to start thinking about how to create program policies. These program policies should be based on the wonderful changes that they've made or will make through both their pilot action plan and their long-term action plan. So moving into more of the evaluation side, in terms of evaluation tools that are being used today, your project coordinator should have received or should be receiving the packet protocols containing the evaluation tools from our evaluation team prior to the learning session. The package should contain the attendance sheets, the pre and post tests, as well as the feedback forms. So at check-in, after you've collected those action period tasks, go ahead and distribute the participant handbooks. You should give one per person, and the Learning Session 3 post-test, as well as the Learning Session 4 pre-test. Reinforce that all participants need to complete them. Participants who did not attend Learning Session 3 should still go ahead and complete the Learning Session 3 post-test, since it is also based on the content activities that should have taken place during their Learning Session 3 action period at their program. There is a spot on that post-test that asks if they have attended the Learning Session 3, and it's okay if they have not. They can just check no there. Remember that this time should also be an opportunity to network amongst participants. So encourage participants to speak with other programs and learn their strengths and areas of improvement that they've identified through their action plans. So after we've welcomed everybody back, we've collected their action period tasks, they've filled out those first two evaluation tools, go ahead and divide participants up into their respective TA breakout groups, or keep them as a large group, whatever you prefer to do. And using the Learning Session 4 morning breakout group discussion notes that you will find in the Learning Session 4 implementation guide, facilitate a group discussion around the Learning Session 3 action period task that the participants completed during the Learning Session 3 action period. Some of the questions that you might want to ask is if participants learned something from completing the task, if they found it beneficial to have time with their program staff to discuss those activities and tasks. Did participants feel comfortable facilitating the action period in their program? What are some of the challenges they've been facing? And do they have any suggestions for improvement? Please remind participants that they will use the long-term action plan that they completed during Learning Session 3 to continue to make healthy changes in their programs. All right, so let's move on to Part A, Principles of Family Support. Within this segment, we have 2 activities, including the Cultural Awareness Scavenger Hunt and the Creating a Family-Friendly Environment. We would also like you to show a powerful video titled Bringing Families Together, Building Community. You will have an hour and 15 minutes for this segment from about 9:45 in the morning to 11 a.m. Before we dive into a more in-depth explanation of the activities for this segment, I do want to point out that we revisit the importance of keeping the social ecological model in mind as we move forward. As you may remember, this was previously introduced in Learning Session 2 and 3. And as you can see, the family shown here in the orange ring there connects the ECE program to the child. This is just a good visual as a way to emphasize that creating healthy changes within a program which influences the child's health can be more effective when we engage those families and parents as partners in this effort. So as mentioned, the social ecological model is used to set the tone for this segment. We also have 2 activities, 1 video, and a physical activity break in this segment. For that physical activity break, go ahead and choose an activity from the Nutrition and Movement Activity book or one of your choosing. This segment also contains content on the principles of family support, which helps identify ways that families can engage ECE programs and maintain relationships. It highlights cultural competence as well as specific models, such as the Strengthening Families framework, to identify and encourage ways that providers can work with families to create a supportive and family-friendly environment. There are 7 principles of family support that are identified through the Strengthening Families framework. This framework was designed by the Center of Study in Social Policy, and while we give you an overview of the framework within the presentation, you and your participants can find additional information at their website. And the website address is www.strengtheningfamilies.net. So one of the activities in this segment, participants will do the Cultural Awareness Scavenger Hunt. To conduct this activity, have participants turn to the Cultural Scavenger Hunt activity located on page 4-35 in their participant handbook. Ask participants to stand up, and using this list, they should move around the room to find people who fit the description on the list. When a person fits the particular description, ask them to initial your sheet. Any individual can initial another person's sheet only one time. After the activity, have participants share if they liked the activity and why they liked it. So next we have the video Bringing Families Together, Building Community. And this video was developed by the Sheltering Arms Educare in Atlanta, Georgia. It highlights their own program's experiences with families and how they gained family support in the efforts in their program. The video is really designed to encourage discussion among the participants. After it is shown, have participants identify what they are currently doing in their own programs and some useful ideas that they can take away from the video. With this video, if you're connected to the internet in the site that you're conducting the learning session, you can go ahead and click the image shown on the slide to start the video. If the internet connection is weak, this video can also be found on your companion USB and can be accessed that way as well. The last activity in the segment is creating a family-friendly environment activity. You can have participants turn to this activity on page 4-36 in the participant handbook. And to conduct the activity, ask participants to take about 10 minutes to individually review the best practices on the sheet, noting the ones they already do and writing how they do them currently and the best practices they would like to do. Ask them to discuss their thoughts with the participants at their tables. And after the allotted time, after about 10 minutes, ask for volunteers to share with a large group. The family-friendly environment activity is used to have participants think about what best practices they are currently doing and what activities they can do to enhance their ECE environment. Participants use this activity to reflect and discuss what they are currently doing in their program. Moving on to part B of this presentation, importance of effective communication. This segment of the day is from 11 a.m. to 11:45 and is the last segment before lunch. So this segment identifies the importance of maintaining effective and positive communication among families and program staff. Communication is very important to maintaining relationships among parents and families. Participants should be able to identify communication skills strategies and implement them to assist in promoting positive relationships. Cultural competence is also highlighted in this area to assist participants in understanding the variations of communication among different cultures. Within this segment, we also have the hot button activity and a discussion around habits that block and open communication. I'll go into more detail on those on the next couple of slides. So for this discussion, have participants turn to the habits that block and open communications in the participant handbook and review the habits that are listed. Facilitate a large group discussion on some of the habits that jump out at them and some that they would like to adopt. It may also be fun for you and your fellow trainer to act out a couple of these scenarios for your participants. Next, we have the hot button activity. To conduct the hot button activity, ask participants to turn to the hot button activity in their participant handbook and write down behaviors that push their button on the first row of circles at the top of that page. Next, on the second row, they should write down the feelings they had during the times of the behaviors listed in that first row. And then on the last line, or the third row, have participants write down the impact that their feelings during the time of the behavior had on the relationship with the children who exhibit the same behaviors. And let participants know that these scenarios that they described in the hot button activity will be used in the role-playing activity that they will do after lunch. So next, everybody has a tasty lunch for about 45 minutes and really encourage participants to network during this time. Next, we have the role-playing activity. And here I want you all to split participants up into groups of 3. Have participants work with other programs that they may not have previously worked with or may not be familiar with. Using their responses to the hot button activity that they just did before lunch, or using the scenarios listed on page 19 in your implementation guide, have participants pick a specific difficult situation they have faced with a parent and role play how they can better resolve the issue. Participants should choose a role as either the parent, the ECE provider, or the observer of this interaction. The participant role of the parent should present to the group a difficult situation they have experienced. Or the participant role of the ECE provider should act out the example and use their knowledge of effective communication skills to resolve the situation. And lastly, the participant role of the observer is to identify the key skills that are used during the activity and share with the group. The key skills that should be displayed in the role-playing exercise that was covered in the presentation itself include active listening skills, including facial expressions and body language, verbal and nonverbal feedback, as well as eye messages. The role-playing activity is allocated for a longer period of time to allow for all participants to engage in this activity. So with time permitting, each participant should walk through each role as either the parent, the ECE provider, or the observer. After the role-playing activity, we move into facilitating change in your program. This is where you will either break off into your TA breakout groups again or remain as a large group to explain the action period tasks that should be completed between learning sessions 4 and 5. As you can see, we've suggested 45 minutes for this segment from about 1:15 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The action period is designed to help programs stay informed and engaged in parental involvement. So please use this time for programs to network with each other and allow them to spend time gathering ideas and making sure they feel comfortable with the next steps in this process. So once you are all together as a group, encourage participants to turn to page 4-41 in their participant handbooks and follow along with the leadership team guide. So within the Learning Session 4 action period, the leadership team will find a time to train the program staff. This should take about an hour to 2 hours. This, again, can be broken up during lunch, at staff meetings, after a program day, however they see fit. They should complete the Learning Session 4 group discussion worksheet with program staff, designating one person from the leadership team to actually write the answers down on the worksheet. The leadership team should also collaborate with program staff to enhance the long-term action plan goals to include family and parent engagement. They do not need to revise and turn in a hard copy of this, but we do want them to have those discussions with their program staff and think through how to take their goals and also include family and parent engagement. They should also continue to work on a storyboard demonstrating the changes the program has made in between Learning Session 3 and Learning Session 5. They will also complete the post-Go knapsack instruments that they also completed during the Learning Session 1 action period. So as you may remember, there are 5 instruments. There's the breastfeeding and infant feeding instrument, child nutrition, infant and child physical activity, outdoor play and learning, as well as screen time. As mentioned, programs should complete the same instruments that they did during the Learning Session 1 action period. And what I mean by that is if a program serves infants, they should complete all 5 of those instruments. However, some of our programs are not serving infants, in which case the breastfeeding and infant feeding instrument does not really apply to them. And so therefore, they only need to complete 4 of the 5 of those instruments. So one copy of each instrument should be completed and turned in at Learning Session 5. Again, as mentioned in Learning Session 1 action period and in your implementation guides for this as well, the director and or leadership team should be responsible for completing this. However, if other teachers, if it's desired that they would like to provide input as well, that is fine, but we just request that there is one copy of each instrument. So either the director and or leadership team completes it, or the director and leadership team with the help of other teachers within the program complete it, but we just need that one copy. And then they will bring all action period materials back to Learning Session 5. So we're looking for that Learning Session 4 group discussion worksheet, that storyboard for our storyboard presentations, as well as the post-Go knapsack instrument. So within this segment, we also have the brag session activity. The brag session activity is one of the protocols developed by the University of Florida and the Early Learning Coalition of Miami-Dade Monroe to help create an environment for collaboration and effective adult learning. This activity is an opportunity for participants to share and celebrate their successes so far. So go ahead and split participants up into small groups, about 3 to 5 people per group. Distribute small pieces of paper to the participants and ask them to write down a success they have had in implementing healthy changes in their program and place it in the center of the table or group. Once everyone has written down their success, have participants pick one of the pieces of paper and read it aloud to the small group. Encourage participants to ask each other questions and discuss their success in their small groups. So moving on to Part D, we're going to further discuss early learning standards, but particularly at home. This segment reviews the developmental domains and encourages parent participation with meeting the early learning standards at home, and asks ECE staff to think about how to integrate healthy eating and physical activities into their daily routines, while meeting early learning standards. Providers should be aware of the standards in their state. It is important to address providers' concerns as to how to meet the early learning standards while integrating them into their curriculum and daily lesson plans. So now's a good time to distribute or insert your state's early learning standards into this segment. So there's about 30 minutes allocated for this segment, and it is from about 2 o'clock to 2:30. So this section highlights those early learning standards that are common among most states. Remember that each state is different, and while the standards that are presented are general, be sure to be more specific and highlight your state early learning standards. The commonly used domains presented also indicate strategies that can be used at home to promote the development and standards. Each domain has a home connection that will assist the participants in learning how to connect what they are doing with parent engagement. We also have an activity addressing home activities and early learning standards, which I'll address further on the following slide. In addition to all that, this segment contains a physical activity break. So go ahead and choose and conduct an activity from the Nutrition and Movement Activity Book or one of your choosing. So for this activity and discussion around home activities and early learning standards, go ahead and divide the participants into about 5 groups. Assign each group one of the early learning standards of each developmental domain, and give the groups about 5 to 7 minutes to create their own activity that families can do at home to support one of the early learning standard domains. Have each group present their activity and explain how it supports the domain they were assigned. As the participants are creating the activity, encourage them to think of activities that are quick and easy to implement. So we made it to the last segment of the day, and this one is titled, Bringing It All Together. As you can see, we've allotted about 15 minutes to this segment from about 2:30 to 2:45 in the afternoon. Use this segment as an opportunity to reflect back on the day. Have participants share their views and feelings about the learning session. Discuss their plans to incorporate the information they've learned into their program and lesson planning. You may even want to use chart paper and record strategies that programs have already identified just from being in the learning session on what they want to adopt in their own program to engage parents and families in their programs. Remind participants of the many, many resources they've received so far or will receive that can help their program to further engage families. So they received the Nemours Best Practices for Healthy Eating in Learning Session 2. Within that guide, and it's shown here on the slide, it contains family tip sheets that they can copy. They've also received the Nemours Best Practices for Physical Activity, which also contains family tip sheets, and they received that at Learning Session 3. They've also received or will receive the Dr. Kraft's Active Playbook, and Chapter 7 focuses on physical activities that families can do. Participants that either receive that at Learning Session 3, or they might receive it coming up in Learning Session 5. And then lastly, they've also received the Sesame Street Healthy Habits for Life, and they received that at Learning Session 3. And there's a Section 3 in that resource titled Every Day is a Healthy Day, and it really targets activities for families as well. So use the last 15 minutes of the day to get participants' feedback through the Learning Session 4 feedback form. Make sure everything is filled out, especially the individual's information and enrollment ID. That just makes sure that Gretchen Swanson Center for Nutrition has all the information they need to accurately document participant information. All right, well, that is the end of the webinar. I hope this webinar provided you with the information that you need to run a successful learning session. If you have any additional questions, please contact your project coordinator, Brianna, or me for additional guidance. And you can see our contact information is listed there on this slide. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great day.